Cool and cute, strong and smart can be shy and cute. Sometimes there are some female leaders who can be gentle and domineering, jealous male leaders who have a strong possessiveness plus together abuse slag+no misunderstanding, no junior. The first time we met, she was a joke in everyone's eyes, and we were just strangers. The second time we met, she talked about business with him, but he said she was ugly. But I don't want to. The days ahead will be like the true fragrance law that even Mr. Liu can't escape. Mr. Liu, do you think I'm still ugly? Ugly? When did I say that? Mr. Liu, who do you think is the most beautiful among these women? Not as beautiful as you. After marriage. Miss Ning asked Mr. Liu. Why did you think you liked me the first time you saw me? Mr. Liu. This is not the first time. Miss Ning. How could it be? Where have you seen me before? Mr. Liu. In my dream. Keywords of the novel. You are my joy of the whole world without pop-ups, you are my joy of the whole world. Download the full text, you are my joy of the whole world. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Groom Runs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Groom Runs. Cloud City, night falls. Bang, bang, bang. Countless brilliant fireworks bloomed in the sky, illuminating couples tightly embracing and sweetly kissing each other on the ground. The city exudes a strong sour smell of love everywhere, with only single dogs emitting a faint fragrance. At the same time, in the magnificent banquet hall of the Imperial Palace Hotel, toasts and congratulations were frequently heard. Ning Yushi was full of anticipation, with a sweet and happy smile on her lips. She held his arm and walked onto the stage with envious gazes from everyone, step by step entering their own happy life. But I don't want to. I'm sorry, Yushi, I can't get engaged to you. Fu Lin suddenly interrupted the MC's soon-to-say engagement. The originally lively audience fell into a eerie silence with his words. Ning Yushi on stage was hit hard by a sudden incident and couldn't come to her senses. A few seconds later, Ning Yushi, who had regained his senses, pulled out a forced smile and grabbed a corner of his suit jacket with his slender and tender little hand. Alan, today is a special day, so let's not joke anymore. Look, the guests are all scared by your joke. He loves to joke with her the most on weekdays. He must have seen himself too nervous to make such a joke about himself. Fu Lin mercilessly knocked off her hand and turned his head to look at her. With just one glance, Ning Yushi's face instantly lost its color. That indifferent yet guilty gaze is already the best answer. I'm sorry. The pale and powerless apology, like a pair of scissors shining with cold light, mercilessly cuts through their past. More like a heavy hammer hitting her head hard, shattering all reason and hope. Ning Yushi's thin and weak body shook, and she took a few steps back with a floating gait before barely standing firm. A pair of agile big eyes, blocked by thick bangs, shimmered with water, but stubbornly unwilling to fall, looked straight at him and said, "Why?" The almost desperate gaze made Fu Lin's heart tighten, and unfamiliar emotion spread from his heart. Ignoring the abnormality in his heart, Fu Lin turned around coldly and walked towards the entrance of the banquet hall, ignoring the voices and gazes around him. Stop. What does Fu Xiao mean by this? The engagement was originally brought up by Fu Xiao, but now it has been publicly reneged on. Do you think our Ning family is easy to bully? Mr. Ning's eyes were blazing with anger as he shot straight at Fu Lin. The crutch in hand struck the ground heavily, making muffled noises. Fu Kongsheng stepped forward and grabbed Fu Lin, smiling as he made a comeback. The old man calmed down. Let me talk about him, he said. Then he scolded in a low voice, "Stinky kid, this is not the time for you to be stubborn. Hurry up and get back on stage for me. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it after the engagement banquet is over." Now he is not only slapping the face of the Ning family, but also slapping the face of his Fu family. Which one present is not a prominent figure in the business world? If this news were to spread today, not to mention the shame of the Ning family, even his Fu family would become a laughing stock. Fu Lin remained silent for a few seconds, then looked up at Ning Boguang and said, "Grandpa, I will give an explanation to the Ning family, you and Yushi later." After speaking, he didn't take a glance at the people on the stands anymore, disregarding everyone's obstruction, and mercilessly turned around and left. "You come back. You. Ning Boguang didn't finish his words before he felt a severe tightness in his chest. He covered his chest with one hand and stared wide at the direction Fu Lin was leaving, trembling all over. I fainted directly the next second. "Grandpa." Ning Yushi quickly ran off the stage and stumbled towards Ning Boguang's side. "Mr. Ning. Mr. Ning. Grandpa. Grandpa. Call an ambulance. Hurry up and call an ambulance." Ning Yushi shouted in despair, holding Ning Boguang in her arms. The tears that I had been holding back all along eventually burst into my eyes. At the same time, several men in suits and leather shoes were standing at the entrance of the banquet hall of the Imperial Hotel, witnessing everything that had happened. The two men with somewhat similar appearances, led by him, stood side by side, with handsome and graceful figures, a dignified and handsome appearance, and an extraordinary aura. At a glance, one can tell that one's identity and family background are extraordinary. TSK, this man is really not a good person. If you say you regret getting married, then you regret getting married. Although this little girl doesn't look pretty, she still looks soft and cute. How could you bear to leave the little girl alone to face such a scene? The man in a dark blue suit said with a playful smile, with a strong interest in his eyes. He continued, "Brother, do you think I should have a hero to save the beauty? Then, when the little girl is moved, she may make a promise with her own life. I heard that since ancient times, red and blue have been popular. She is wearing a red dress, which perfectly matches my suit." The more Lu Yuxiao spoke, the more he felt that his idea was good. At that time, he will also have a girlfriend. With a shield, you don't have to be chased by the old children at home every day to arrange blind dates. Thinking about it, it's still beautiful. Lu Yuxiao was thinking about it when suddenly he felt a chill in his back, as if he was in an extremely cold place. Suddenly, a stirring spirit came to mind and met a pair of black eyes that were as cold as a cold pond. "Are you too idle?" the man opposite Lu Yuxiao said coldly. A man's face is like frost, but he cannot stop the delicate and cold face that drives women crazy. A well-cut black haute couture suit, outlining broad shoulders and a slim waist, the collar of the white shirt is meticulously tied with a navy blue patterned tie, and the sapphire blue diamond cufflinks on the shirt cuff sparkle under the crystal light. The man exuded a chilly chill all over his body, and his indifferent gaze made Lu Yuxiao scream inwardly. Sure enough, the next second I heard the man's cold and heartless words. "Since it's so idle, the profit of Yunqing branch will increase by 30% this year. If it doesn't meet the requirements, then when will it meet the requirements and when will it go back?" After Lu Yuding finished speaking, his faint gaze swept over the girl lying on the ground in a disheveled state in the banquet hall, and he turned to walk towards the elevator. Upon hearing this, Lu Yuxiao was so frightened that he was all over. He chased after him like oil on the soles of his feet, howling, "Brother, brother, brother. My dear brother, you can't be so cruel to your brother. Dad said he wanted me to come to Yunqing to practice for a year, and now it's just 1 year. I have also met Dad's requirements. You can't leave your brother here for another year." Although Yunqing is not far from Kyoto, his old man is really cruel to him. Saying that he came to Yunqing to practice for a year is really not allowing him to go home for a year. Even during the Chinese New Year, he spent it alone in Cloud City. Do you treat your biological son like this? Ah. Besides, if we want to increase it by 30%, it's just a fantasy, isn't it? I'm afraid he won't be able to go home in his lifetime. The more Lu Yuxiao thought about it, the scarier he became. He quickened his pace and chased after him, howling in agony, "Brother, did you hear what I said? Brother! Brother!" Lu Yuxiao chased into the elevator and slowly closed the door, isolating everything on the first floor. Dang 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 dang. Rose has opened a new book. Different formulas, but still the same sweetness. I hope everyone supports me and I hope you will like it. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Life on the Line. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Life on the Line. Central Hospital. The corridor at night was quiet and terrifying, with a lonely figure standing deep inside. The girl was dressed in a red formal dress and had not even had time to change it off. Her high heels were long gone, and her originally fair and delicate feet were covered in tiny scratches, mixed with mud and blood, and dirty. It has been over an hour since Ning Buguang was pushed into the operating room, but Ning Yushi seems to feel no pain or the piercing chill from the ground, like a soulless puppet, standing at the entrance of the operating room with empty eyes. It wasn't until the doctor wearing a surgical uniform appeared in her sight that Ning Yushi's scattered gaze gradually became focused. "Doctor, how's my grandfather doing?" Ning Yushi's voice was hoarse, and there was a slight tremble when she listened carefully. "She is afraid, she is extremely afraid. In this world, my grandfather is one of the few relatives who genuinely treats her well. If my grandfather really can't be saved, she doesn't know if she can still hold on." The patient had a sudden heart attack, but fortunately it was delivered in a timely manner and saved his life for the time being. However, because the patient's blood vessels have been extensively blocked, surgery must be performed. Please discuss with your family whether to agree to the surgery. Agree. Agree. Doctor, please be sure to save Grandpa. Ning Yushi tightly grabbed the doctor's hand and begged, as if holding on to the last straw in his life. Can you make a decision? Is there anyone else at home? Let's discuss it with them. The doctor's gaze was full of doubt. They must clearly inform their families of the surgical risks. And the girl in front of me looks like she's only 16 or 17 years old, how can one make a decision about life and fate alone? Doctor, I can. I can. There are only me and my grandfather at home, please make sure to save him. Ning Yushi choked up. The doctor looked at her sympathetically and unconsciously softened her voice, then signed on the surgical consent form. You don't have to worry too much, the success rate of the surgery is still very high. Thank you doctor, thank you. A few hours later, when Ning Yushi's renewed hope was about to run out, the surgery finally came to an end. Subsequently, Ning Buguang was pushed into the intensive care unit. Ning Yushi followed the doctor behind him, meticulously remembering all the doctor's instructions. Just as I was about to go see Ning Buguang, I saw a group of people walking in the distance. Under the thick bangs, a hint of sarcasm flashed through his eyes, and he quickly calmed down. Damn girl! Why didn't your grandfather notify us of such a big incident? The leading woman, dressed in elegant and luxurious attire, with silver hair curled up in a perm, hurriedly walked towards her with someone helping her. Before she could even stand still, she began to angrily point at her and curse. Ning Yushi lowered her head and spoke softly, Auntie, my grandfather's surgery has just ended. I didn't have time to call you before you came. That's right, the person in front of her who scolds her indiscriminately is her aunt, her grandfather's sister, Ning Ying. Ning Ying. Humph. I see you don't even want to inform me. If I hadn't seen the news, I'm afraid I would have seen your grandfather again at his funeral. Ning Yushi, who lowered her head, suddenly had a cold look in her eyes, and her originally obedient voice also carried a hint of sharpness. Please pay attention to your words. Grandpa is out of danger and not a big deal, but he needs to rest and is not suitable for visiting. Please go back first. When Grandpa is well, it's not too late for her to come and see him. Damn girl, you've gained some skills, haven't you? Dare you talk back to me now? Don't think you can be reckless with the support of the Fu family. Besides, Fu Xiao has publicly withdrawn from the marriage, and the Fu family is no longer your support. You're just a joke in Cloud City, a useless guy nobody wants. Get out of here. Don't block me from visiting your grandfather. Ning Ying fiercely grabbed Ning Yushi's ear, trying to pull her away from the entrance of the intensive care unit. Unexpectedly, Ning Yushi's feet seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, standing motionless in place. The thick bangs blocked her cold and terrifying gaze, making her expression unclear. Her red lips were tightly pursed, but she looked stubborn. Tao Huaqi, who was supporting Ning Ying, saw her appearance with disgust in his eyes. From childhood to adulthood, Ning Yushi appeared gentle and obedient, but also had a stubborn temperament. Once it's something she doesn't want, even if the heavenly king Laozi comes, it's useless. So, he detested her indomitable appearance. Tao Huaqi said, "Damn girl, didn't you hear your aunt ask you to move away? Didn't you also listen to your elders? You have no upbringing at all. It's true that there are things that are born without being raised by mothers. Yushi, it's your fault not to let mom see your grandfather while you're blocking here. They are also siblings, and mom is very worried about your grandfather's accident. She can only be reassured by seeing him with her own eyes and making sure he's okay. Are you still afraid that we will harm your grandfather?" The woman speaking softly was Tao Huaqi, who was also her cousin's wife Yao Fang. Yao Fang was adorned with jewels and precious jewels, as well as jade bracelets that were very eye-catching, fearing that others might not recognize her status as a noble lady. "Grandma, let me see. Sister, this is hiding her selfishness. After all, my uncle is unconscious now and has not made a will. What if?" Tao Yunfei didn't continue, but the meaning was already self-evident. They are not sure about the specific situation of Ning Buguang now. If the old man dies without a will, Ning Yushi will become the first-in-line heir. At that time, everything in the Ning family will fall into the hands of this dead girl. They won't get anything. They have coaxed the old man for a lifetime. If they don't get anything, wouldn't all these years of effort be in vain? The more people thought about it, the more they became frightened. Especially Ning Ying and Tao Huaqi, their angry eyes glared at Ning Yushi. If her gaze could kill someone, now Ning Yushi doesn't know how many times she has been delayed by Ling Qi. "Bastard, are you trying to take the opportunity to kill your grandfather? You unfilial descendant." After cursing, Ning Ying's eyes turned and she suddenly sat down on the ground, crying regardless of her appearance, "Brother. Look at your good grandson. You have worked hard to raise her up, but she is just a white-eyed wolf. Now because of the Ning family's property, she is going to harm you. She is going to kill you. Brother. Wake up. Wake up and see the true face of this white-eyed wolf. Uncle, you can't die. If you die, it will be as this dead girl wishes." Tao Huaqi also cried along. Even Yao Fang and Tao Yunfei lowered their heads and wiped their tears. The quiet corridor echoed with the mournful cries of Ning Ying and Tao Huaqi. Ning Yushi was like an outsider throughout the whole process, calmly watching them perform this family love drama like jumping clowns. Regarding updates. The free period is 2 updates per day, with 2,000 words per chapter, which means updating 4,000 words per day. The update time is usually in the evening, and I will set a fixed time for updates in the future. As for the time, it will be updated later. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Making a Fuss in Hospitals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Making a fuss in hospitals. As soon as Ning Buguang's attending physician returned to the office, he heard the noisy sounds in the hallway and rushed over. "What's going on? This is a hospital, we can't make loud noises. Don't you know? This will affect the rest of other patients." Tao Yunfei walked forward with an apologetic expression and explained, "I'm sorry, doctor. My grandmother and father are also worried about my uncle's illness and want to go inside to see him, but my sister is not sensible enough to block us from entering. That's why my grandmother's voice of educating my sister is louder. Ning Yushi lowered her head and tugged at the corner of her mouth. What a naive person. Others don't know about their family, but she has lived under the same roof with them for so many years, and her Sima Zhao's heart is clear to her. The commotion here to see my grandfather is just a concern that I won't be able to get the property of the Ning family and the shares of the Ning family. If they were to meet their grandfather, they wouldn't know what kind of family drama to play again, and it's not even possible to find a way to make the old man make a will. My grandfather just had surgery and couldn't bear the second stimulation. How could she let them disturb my grandfather at this time? I have said that my grandfather's surgery has just ended and he needs to rest. It's not too late for you to come and visit him once he's better. The doctor took a deep look at the stubborn and lonely figure at the entrance of the intensive care unit, then scanned the person in front of him and said solemnly, "No matter what the reason is, it's not a reason for you to make a big fuss here. The patient has just completed surgery and needs rest. Moreover, it's not time for visits now, and your presence here will only affect the rest of other patients." Tao Huaqi's attitude was somewhat relaxed, and he instinctively looked at Ning Ying. Seeing her shake her head, he immediately spoke with an anxious expression, "Doctor, please accommodate me. Uncle is suddenly ill. If we can't see him safe and sound with our own eyes, even if we go back, we will worry all night long. I am the patient's attending physician, and I can responsibly tell you that the patient is no longer seriously ill, but has not yet woken up. If you are unable to help here, it will affect the patient's rest. It's better to go back first and visit the patient after they wake up. Don't tell me those grandiose reasons, I don't listen to them. Who knows if you have been bought by this dead girl, or if you have been seduced by this dead girl. Anyway, I won't get up until I see my brother today," Ning Ying said as a scoundrel sitting on the ground. The doctor frowned slightly upon hearing this. It seems unexpected that this was said from an elder's mouth. But Ning Yushi has long been accustomed to it. "Auntie, if you insist on not leaving and like to be watched like a monkey, I have nothing to say. But you can afford to lose this person, the Ning family cannot afford to lose this person." After speaking, my gaze swept around the nurse's desk. I saw the nurses on duty sticking their heads out to watch the excitement, whispering in confusion. But looking at their actions and expressions, they must be discussing what happened here. All right. Your grandfather has a lot of courage when something happens, doesn't he? Dare to talk to me like this. Afraid that the Ning family will lose face. I think the main culprit that made the Ning family lose face is you unfilial son. My brother has been raising you for so many years and has been feeding dogs. If I had known you were a white-eyed wolf, your mother should have strangled you directly when she brought you back. So, Ning Ying sat on the ground, crying and cursing, accusing Ning Yushi of all sorts of things. The doctor beside him glanced at Ning Yushi, who had a calm expression, and turned his head to whisper a few words to the assistant behind him. A few minutes later, several people wearing security uniforms walked over and without hesitation, stood up Ning Ying sitting on the ground and walked out. Ning Ying shouted loudly, "What are you doing? Let go of me. Let me go. Is that how your hospital treats family members? You are bullying the elderly, I want to expose your atrocities." The security guard disregarded her struggles and drove her further and further. "Tao Huaqi. What are you doing? Put my mom down. Put her down. Grandma." Tao Yunfei chased after her for a few steps, then ran to Ning Yushi and begged, "Sister, how can you say that grandma is also your family? You are so familiar with the doctor, so please help grandma plead for mercy and ask the security guard to let grandma down." Familiar with doctors? Has she ever admitted it herself? This dirty water splashed on without any expression. If she really spoke up, she would have assumed that she had some personal relationship with the doctor. Ha! Do you really think she's stupid or easy to bully? Ning Yushi frowned and said, Fei, I only know the doctor. It was indeed your mistake to shout here, and I have no reason to plead for my aunt. Why don't you advise her to go back first? I will inform you as soon as my grandfather wakes up. Tao Huachi pointed at her nose and angrily cursed, You are indeed a heartless dog. A burly security guard stood in front of Tao Huachi and said, Sir, if you keep yelling here, you probably won't have walked out of the hospital on your own. Okay. Great. Fei, let's go. Tao Huachi snorted coldly, looked at the security guard with fear, and left with Tao Yunfei and Yao Fang. Until she couldn't see the figure of Ning Ying's family, Ning Yushi finally relaxed and turned to look at the doctor. Thank you. But if you do this, it will bring you a lot of trouble later on. Then we also need to see who they are causing trouble with. Dr. Zhu is from our hospital. Before the little assistant could finish his proud words, he was suddenly interrupted by Dr. Zhu's voice. You don't have to worry about these things, I can solve them. On the other hand, it's you who keeps holding back and making things worse for those who bully you. It's better to rise up and resist, maybe your life will be better. Ning Yushi's expression was momentarily surprised and unexpected. Surprisingly, he did not believe Ning Ying's one-sided words and instead saw things through thoroughly. However, such an expression was quickly concealed. Ning Yushi didn't say much and bowed slightly. Doctor, I've caused you trouble today. Also, thank you for saving my grandfather. After speaking, he turned around and entered the ward. In the intensive care unit, Ning Yushi took off all her protective shells and cried like an injured little beast lying beside Ning Buguang's bed. She did not cry when her fiancé publicly regretted her marriage because she knew crying was just a joke. Despite being bullied by Ning Ying's family, she didn't cry because she knew crying wouldn't solve anything. But my grandfather is one of the few people in this world who truly loves her. If she loses even my grandfather, she doesn't know what else in this world is worth her nostalgia for. Grandpa, it's Xiaoxi's fault. Xiaoxi shouldn't be stubborn or insist on getting engaged to Fulin without listening to you. As long as Grandpa gets better, Xiaoxi will listen to Grandpa's advice in the future, okay? Ning Yushi murmured softly, words and phrases drifting in the moonlight, unable to receive an answer. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Company Accidents. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Company Accidents. Ningjia Bieyuan. Ning Ying smashed the things in the living room clean as soon as she returned. The servants were so frightened that they quickly retreated. When Ning Ying was tired from smashing, she gasped heavily and stood on the sofa. That dead girl has developed skills now. She not only dares to talk back to me, but also dares to have someone throw me out of the hospital. Her grandfather's front foot just had an accident, and his back foot dares to rebel against me. Today, there is that doctor guarding her. When she comes back to see, I won't peel her skin. Tao Huachi didn't respond, but he didn't object either. As long as he thought about the embarrassing appearance of them being thrown out by the hospital security guard today, he couldn't help but feel resentful. For so many years, he has been surrounded by two major families, the Ning family and the Tao family. When has he ever been so shameful? Even though the Tao family is in decline now, no one dares to humiliate him like this because he is still the eldest young master of the Ning family. This time, it was thanks to that dead girl that she threw herself into the house. Tao Yunfei smiled confidently and poured a cup of tea for Ning Ying, comforting her softly. Grandma, please calm down because my sister's body is not worth it. In fact, I observed the situation in the hospital room when my sister was not paying attention just now. It seems that my uncle hasn't woken up yet, and it's useless for us to stay in the hospital. However, his vital signs are stable, so I arranged for 2 bodyguards to guard there before leaving. They will report any news in a timely manner. You can stay at home and wait for news. Upon hearing her arrangement, Ning Ying's face improved a bit, but there was still lingering anger. It's still thoughtful of you to remind them to keep an eye on it. The old man can't have anything to do, she said. Yes, Grandma. Tao Yunfei responded and walked out with her phone in hand. Tao Huaqi and Yao Fang sat down cautiously when they saw that she was not as angry as before. Although they are her son and daughter.in.law, the old lady's anger can be said to be unrecognizable. Anyone could become her punching bag. Unless absolutely necessary, they will not rush forward to seek abuse. Ningying let out a long sigh of frustration and leaned back on the sofa, closing her eyes and taking a nap. Suddenly, a pair of eyes opened, and a deep gleam flashed through their eyes. Ah Hua, come with me to the study, they said. No one knows what they talked about this night. The next day, Ning Yushi stayed at the hospital all night because she was worried about Ning Buguang and still had the idea of being divorced. She didn't sleep well all night. After washing my face with cold water in the bathroom, I became much more conscious. Ning Yushi lifted her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Her clothes were dirty and messy, and her face was pale like a ghost. Her eyes were covered in red blood, and there was a heavy blue color in front of her. What a mess! How many years has she not seen such a miserable version of herself? It took too long, even she forgot about herself. Ha! Ning Yushi chuckled softly, with a hint of coldness in his mockery. Ning Yushi, you've been really stupid for so many years. Surprisingly, you still think that Fu Lin is a man worth entrusting for life. Do you still want to replace that person's position in Fu Lin's heart? Even if she told you she didn't like Fu Lin, she would never like him. Even if she leaves silently. But so what? She still occupies Fu Lin's entire heart, doesn't she? And when did you ever occupy a place in his heart? Ha! It's really ridiculous and sad. Ning Yushi shook her head in self-deprecation, swallowed the pain in her heart, wiped her face dry, and walked towards the hospital room. In the ward, Butler Chi furrowed her brows and anxiously paced back and forth. She hurriedly welcomed her and said, "Miss, there's something wrong with the company." Although the Butler Chi was the butler of the Ning family, he had always been the deputy of Ning Buguang when he was young, and was the heartfelt right-hand man of the old man. Even now, Mr. Ning will entrust some matters of the Ning group to him. So, as soon as the company had an accident, he received the news and rushed to the hospital. "Uncle Chi, what's going on?" Ning Yushi rarely saw the anxious appearance of Butler Chi, so it must be a big deal. The news of the old man's fainting last night was sold to reporters by someone unknown. Now the rumors are getting increasingly outrageous, and some even say that the old man is on the verge of collapse. Now several project partners have suddenly withdrawn funds, and these projects have been forced to stop working. The shareholders are going to hold a shareholders meeting early in the morning, and I heard that Mrs. Tao's family is already on their way to the company. Auntie. They are not shareholders of Ning's, so how can they qualify to attend the shareholders meeting? Ning Yushi frowned lightly and asked. My people are checking, Mississippi time is running out, let's go to the company first. What time is the shareholders meeting scheduled? 9 o'clock. Ning Yushi raised her wrist and glanced at the time on her watch. There is still over half an hour left until the shareholder meeting. My grandfather is staying at the city center hospital. Although it is not far from Ning Group, it is currently the peak period of traffic congestion. Being able to arrive in half an hour is considered lucky, but I'm afraid Uncle Chi, arrange a few bodyguards to guard my grandfather's ward entrance. Except for Dr. Zhu, no one is allowed to disturb my grandfather. Also, please provide me with detailed information about the shareholders of the company and information about these projects. Ning Yushi walked out and arranged everything in an orderly manner, with a calm and composed tone that was completely different from the usual submissive appearance in the Ning family. Yes, Mississippi. The butler Chi was infected by her calm appearance, and the anxiety on her face eased a lot. Seeing that she was still wearing last night's dress, she hesitated for a moment and continued to speak. "Miss, do you need me to send someone to prepare a set of clothes for you?" "No need, I'll make my own arrangements." After speaking, as if thinking of something, Ning Yushi slowed down and spoke solemnly. "Uncle Chi, the shareholders meeting later. I trouble you. Miss, rest assured that the Ning group can only belong to you, which is also the old man's lifelong wish." Upon hearing these words, Ning Yushi's calm and self-controlled eyes flickered, and a hint of guilt crossed her face, which was mostly covered by bangs. In recent years, Ning Buguang has had the intention of handing over the Ning group to her. He has repeatedly asked her to handle the affairs of the Ning group and even wanted to transfer the shares of the Ning group to her name, but she has refused. She is well aware that her aunt's family has been coveting the property and company of the Ning family. And my grandfather also takes good care of his sister. If my grandfather gave her the shares under his name, I'm afraid this family will not be peaceful. So she repeatedly refused, just to avoid adding more trouble to her grandfather and at least maintain the surface peace of the family. Now thinking about it, my grandfather is already old but still has to deal with the big and small matters of the company, and she has never taken on any responsibility, which is a bit unfilial. Recalling all the changes that happened yesterday, my heart was filled with ups and downs, with guilt and sourness surging like waves, almost devouring her. I hope the supporting little ones can move their little fingers and vote for a recommendation. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Parent-Child Identification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Parent-Child Identification. After getting on the car, Ning Yushi rubbed her sore forehead, opened her phone and sent a text message, then leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes to rest. Sitting in the passenger seat, the steward Chi looked at Ning Yushi, who was calm and composed in the rearview mirror, exuding a strong and cold aura, and was slightly surprised in his heart. Although he still had his well-behaved and uninteresting attire, meticulous hairstyle, and unchanged black-framed glasses, why did he feel completely different? Overnight, the young lady seemed to have grown up. If the old man sees the young lady like this now, he will definitely be very pleased. Thinking of this, the wrinkled face of the butler Chi became quite kind. Thinking of what Ning Yushi had just instructed, he immediately took out his phone and made a few phone calls, arranging everything. "Miss, I have already had someone send the detailed information of the shareholders and the project information to your email." Ning Yushi responded lightly, lazily opening her eyes and opening her phone to look a little more. Steward Chi turned his head and opened his mouth, wondering if it was too late to read these materials now. After all, Ning Group has many shareholders of all sizes, and if you are not an insider, you can only have a partial understanding of the specific situation of several projects. It is not easy to read all the information in such a short time, let alone remember these things to deal with the old things at the shareholder meeting. It is simply even more difficult. On second thought, the young lady was facing such a tricky problem when she first joined the company, and the pressure was already very high. If he said these discouraging words now, wouldn't it add even more pressure to her? In the midst of tumultuous thoughts, but in just a few seconds, the housekeeper Chi quickly closed his mouth and swallowed the words he blurted out. Just as he was about to turn around and sit down, he suddenly remembered what the old man had told him before and patted his forehead in frustration. Pop. The sound was so loud that even Ning Yushi, who was focused on reading the materials, was caught in the eye. "Miss, look at me forgetting the most important thing." Ning Yushi didn't understand the meaning behind his words. She frowned lightly and looked at him with a puzzled expression on her side. The next second, I will see several documents handed over by Butler Chi. This is a document that the master had prepared a long time ago. The master once told me to take it out at the most critical time, and I think this is the right time now. Ning Yushi took over the document and saw the large characters written on it. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed a little more. Equity transfer agreement. Wills. Another. Paternity test. Upon seeing the last document, her head hummed and she instantly lost her ability to think, leaving her blank. Isn't it true that after despair, there will be hope? Why did she encounter another wave of despair? Is it because her life is not yet full of dog blood? If she is not my grandfather's biological grandson, then who is she? Where would it be her home again? For the first time, Ning Yushi's gaze flickered with confusion. The fingers holding the document unconsciously intensified their strength, and the pale color and slightly trembling fingertips betrayed her inner self. She panicked, she was afraid. She is afraid that after all these years of being genuinely good to her and taking care of her grandfather sincerely, he is not her relative. So what is left of her in this world? At this moment, the butler Chi did not know what Ning Yushi was thinking, only that she had not yet opened those few documents. My face doesn't look very good either. The butler Chi couldn't help but worry. Miss, are you okay? Are you feeling unwell? The old man is seriously ill, and all the hope of the company lies with the young lady. If the young lady's body is currently in a state of health, I'm afraid the company's situation will only be worse. It is even possible for a company that has been passed down for a century to just give up. Ning Yushi regained consciousness from the chaotic thoughts, closed her eyes to suppress the panic in her heart, and spoke hoarsely, I'm fine. Miss, time is tight now. Let me briefly explain the contents of the document. The butler Chi thought she didn't want to waste time on these documents, so she picked out the key points and continued. The old man wanted to hand over the company to the young lady a long time ago, so the equity transfer agreement was prepared very early. As long as the young lady signed, 45% of the shares under the old man's name belonged to the young lady. Now, the old man's body is not as big as before, so miss, I hope you can fulfill the old man's wish. Ning Yushi doesn't know how to face this equity transfer agreement now. Previously, she was her grandfather's grandson and should have taken over the Ning group, allowing the Ning family to go further. But now, if she really isn't from the Ning family bloodline, how can she take this Ning group? Moreover, the old man did not leave any shares for himself. But what if? It's not what she thinks. Uncle Chi, do you know the content of this personal appraisal? Ning Yushi asked eagerly. Look at my memory, I'm really old and forgot about this matter. Miss, this personal appraisal is related to a secret that the old man has kept for most of his life. As he spoke, the butler Chi seemed to be lost in memories and paused for a moment. Upon hearing this, Ning Yushi couldn't help but slow down her breathing, clenching her hands and listening quietly. In fact, Mrs. Tao is not the master's biological sister, which is why for so many years, Mrs. Tao's family has not received more than half of the shares in the Ning family, only some real estate. Ning Yushi has already done a strong psychological construction, just to avoid despair when hearing the truth. I didn't expect to hear such news, with several cracks appearing on my tight face. The next second, he couldn't help but laugh and cry, Uncle Chi, when did your speech turn into gasping for breath? It made her heart feel like she was riding a roller coaster, fluctuating up and down, up and down. Miss, I don't understand what you mean. Butler Chi felt inexplicably disgusted. Ning Yushi breathed a sigh of relief, waved his hand, and smiled helplessly, it's okay. After speaking, I continued to look at the information on my phone, as if the previous incident had not happened. But those clear and bright eyes became increasingly solemn. No wonder my grandfather has always taken good care of my aunt, but he is not very close to her. For so many years, my aunt has been wholeheartedly trying to please and care for her grandfather, never revealing her true face to him. Every day, she tries to make him happy, but only for the sake of Ning's shares. My grandfather only gave my aunt a house, antiques, and jewelry, but he remained silent about the shares. Perhaps my grandfather already knew my aunt's thoughts, but he didn't reveal them. I just don't know how much my aunt knows about her background. The butler Chi originally wanted to remind Ning Yushi that it was important to sign the equity transfer agreement first, but seeing how engrossed she was in reading the information, she thought about reminding her before getting off the car. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Preparation before going to the battlefield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Preparation before going to the battlefield. It seems that the heavens are idle and boring, always wanting to add some obstacles to Ning Yushi. The car had not been running for long when it encountered a big traffic jam. The sound of sirens kept ringing one after another, making the bustling and busy streets even more lively and extraordinary. Last night, she didn't sleep well all night. Ning Yushi was already feeling a headache, but now she is being disturbed by the noisy voices, which makes her mind feel as if it's about to explode. What's going on? Ning Yushi pressed hard on the painful forehead and asked impatiently. It seems that the road ahead was blocked due to a car accident. Miss, what should we do now? There isn't much time left until the shareholders' meeting. Steward Chi had just calmed down and became anxious again. The shareholders are in such a hurry to convene the shareholders' meeting, hoping to usurp power while the old master is critically ill and the young lady has no real power. Now the young lady is willing to take over the company, but unfortunately she has encountered such a situation. What should we do? Now do as I said, find a way to drive back to the intersection we just passed by, then turn right, walk 500 meters, then turn right, enter a small road and walk straight until you come out of it. I don't think I need to tell you the next road, you should also know how to go. The heavy and calm voice seemed to have a magical power that made people submit and believe. When the driver reacted, the car had already backed up to the intersection they had just passed by. The driver quickly turned the steering wheel and followed the route suggested by Ning Yushi. 10 minutes later, we saw the magnificent building towering into the clouds, standing in the center of the city. The headquarters of Ning Group. The butler and driver both glanced at Ning Yushi, who was closing his eyes and recuperating, from the rearview mirror, with a look of admiration in their eyes. If we follow the previous route and don't get stuck in traffic, we can just catch up with the shareholder meeting. But in the traffic jam just now, I don't know how long it will take to arrive. But now, it's already 10 minutes earlier than the original plan. Miss, we're here, reminded the butler Chi. As soon as the words fell, Ning Yushi's phone rang immediately. The butler Chi didn't know what the person on the other end of the phone was saying. He only heard Ning Yushi respond and then say, I'm at the door. Bring it over now. Miss, shouldn't we go in now? Ning Yushi's spirit improved a lot, and with a wicked smile, he said, Uncle Chi, when we go to the battlefield, of course we need to change into battle robes first. You guys go down and wait for me, I need to change clothes in the car. Miss, do you think you should first? Uncle Chi, not only did you gasp for breath when speaking today, but you also became hesitant. Isn't it really because you're getting old? Ning Yushi joked. It's been a long time since I heard the young lady joke with me, said Butler Chi with a long-lost smile on his face. Thinking of the matter, he straightened his expression again. Miss, it's better to sign the equity transfer agreement first. Ning Yushi returned several documents to the Butler Chi and said, Uncle Chi, I hope you can continue to keep these documents safe, especially my grandfather's will. You must not disclose them. Miss, this. Dong. 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 The car window was knocked, interrupting Butler Chi's words. Ning Yushi opened the car door and a girl with a doll-like face walked up a few steps with a red face, Brother Ning. Ning Yushi's gaze flew over, and the girl immediately pursed her mouth tightly. Her round big eyes innocently rolled around, and then continued to speak with a smile, Sister Ning, what you want is ready. Thank you, you go back first. Ning Yushi curled her lips and took the bag from the girl's hand, closing the car door. The girl blushed even redder for some reason and shyly covered her face, bouncing away. The Butler Chi on the car looked bewildered. Who was the girl just now? Does the tone sound familiar with the young lady? But he has been with the master for so many years, and he can also be considered familiar with the young lady. When the young lady was in her teens, her temperament suddenly became withdrawn and timid, so for so many years, only the unpopular young lady from the Jian family was a friend. When did you make new friends, except for studying at school and staying at home? Just as Steward Chi was puzzled, a steady voice came from behind. Uncle Chi, if you don't get off the car again, we really won't be able to make it to the shareholders' meeting. Upon hearing this, Steward Chi immediately opened the door. Get off the car. Close the door. The action is not ambiguous at all. After getting off the car, there was another wave of melancholy. The young lady still hasn't signed the equity transfer agreement. If you don't sign now, it won't be too late for a while. With no real power in hand, what can we do to suppress those old greaseballs who have been in shopping malls for many years? Steward Chi looked at the documents in his hand, sighing and desperately flipping through them. But I didn't want to turn to the last page. A graceful yet atmospheric signature appeared before his eyes. The butler Chi's pupils contracted, and he looked back and forth several times before finally confirming that this was really the signature of the young lady. Suddenly, the butler Chi hugged several documents tightly and smiled like a fool. Master, you can finally rest assured that Miss has finally fulfilled your wish. Ning Yushi changed her clothes, covered her embarrassment with foundation make-up, and painted a light makeup as quickly as possible. It only took 6 minutes from beginning to end. When she got off the car, the butler Chi's eyes lit up as she looked at her. Dressed in a rigorous black professional attire, unlike the half-length skirt that most women choose, Ning Yushi chose a 7-part leggings, revealing her thin and weak ankles that shine white in the sunlight. The black tight suit on her upper body had no decoration, but it embellished her figure with exquisite elegance. If you only look below the neck, it will definitely make people feel like a beautiful woman with a perfect figure. Unfortunately, most of the small face above the neck was covered by thick bangs, and the shiny black hair was meticulously curled up. A pair of stylish black framed glasses were placed on the bridge of the nose, blocking the sharp light in those dazzling eyes. Even with light makeup, this expressionless little face still feels dull and tasteless, unable to taste the beauty. Even so, the passion of the butler Chi was still stimulated. Although the young lady's appearance cannot be changed, the confident and fierce aura emanating from her body is unconsciously intimidating. Even his confidence suddenly burst. A sudden thought came to my mind that as long as the young lady was present, Ning would definitely turn the tide. Ning Yushi took a few steps and noticed that butler Chi was not following him. He turned his head and asked, "Uncle Chi, what are you still doing? We should go up now." Steward Chi quickly responded and followed up, asking his own questions as he walked. "Miss, have you agreed to take over the Ning family?" "Uncle Chi, once I sign, I won't go back on my word." "Since she chooses to sign, she will take on this important task, because it is also what my grandfather hopes for. Little cuties, could you come with a wave of recommended tickets? Love you all." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Shareholders Meeting, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Shareholders Meeting, 1. The conference room of Ning Group is already filled with people, except for the vacancy in the main seat. As time approached 9 o'clock, the discussion in the meeting grew louder. It's almost 9 o'clock, but the chairman hasn't arrived yet. It seems that what was said online is true. In my opinion, it's not as serious as what is said online. The current news is unfounded and exaggerated, and we can't believe it all. Have you forgotten that the chairman has a granddaughter? Even if the chairman doesn't arrive today, his granddaughter will always come to oversee the overall situation for him. What kind of big picture can a little girl lead? And, I heard that the chairman has been wanting her to take over the company in recent years, but she just doesn't learn. Now the company is in crisis, and she's here not to add to the chaos. In my opinion, Mrs. Tao will still lead the big picture. Overnight, shareholders have automatically split into 3 factions. Some shareholders stand on Ning Boguang's side, always believing that the old man is okay. Some have already been bought by Tao Huaqi and sided with Ning Ying. The remaining are the neutral faction, still in a wait-and-see attitude. All kinds of sounds in the conference room fell into the ears of Ning Ying and Tao Huaqi. All of these were within their expectations, so there was no ripple on their face. Tao Huaqi raised his wrist and looked at the time, which was 5 minutes to 9. After whispering a few words to Ning Ying, he stood up and helped her walk towards the main position. The other people in the conference room fell silent upon seeing this, puzzled, excited, and solemn, all with different eyes following Ning Ying. After Ning Ying sat down, Tao Huaqi tidied up his suit and cleared his throat, saying, "Shareholders, I believe you have all seen news about my uncle. We are deeply saddened by his sudden illness. But now Ning is facing a major crisis, and my mother and I have to suppress our grief and step forward to take charge of the overall situation. So, today my mother will attend the shareholders' meeting on behalf of my uncle to discuss the candidates for acting president and the follow-up issues of several shutdown projects." Ning Ying said, "You don't have to be cautious. As for the candidate for acting president, you can speak freely." One of the shareholders immediately said, "Is there any need for discussion? Mr. Tao is a descendant of the Ning family and the only male member in the family. Moreover, Mr. Tao used to be the president of Dow Group, and he is very familiar with the company's affairs. Whether it is public or private, Mr. Tao is the best choice." Before the shareholders could finish speaking, there was only a loud bang as the door to the conference room was pushed open without any gentleness. "Hello shareholders," Ning Yushi politely greeted with a polite smile on his lips. Smile, flawless. Etiquette, impeccable. Even the shareholder who was forcefully interrupted could only hold his breath, unable to vent or swallow, and instead blushed. Ning Yushi glanced lightly at the situation in the conference room and asked in confusion, "Everyone, is this already started? Uncle Chi, shouldn't it be us who are late?" Speaking, his expression was somewhat guilty and regretful, as if he was really reflecting on being late. "Miss, we're not late. It's not much, just exactly 9 o'clock now." Oh, it seems that everyone is worried about the company's affairs and started early. But I wish I wasn't late, otherwise I would be late for the first shareholders meeting, which would inevitably fall into someone's shoes. "Do you think so, Auntie? What are you doing here? Hurry up and get back to the hospital to take care of your grandfather. This is not a place for you to act around." Ning Ying's wrinkled face darkened at the first sight of her. Upon hearing that she was coming to attend the shareholders' meeting, she was even more furious and shouted in a low voice, "I thought she would be obedient and leave here as usual." Unexpectedly, Ning Yushi curled her lips and walked towards Ning Ying's position. "Look at what my aunt said, I'm not a child. How could I come here to act recklessly? I came here today to attend the shareholders' meeting, as it is only natural. I would like to ask my aunt and uncle, although you are from the Ning family and seem to have no shares in your hands, what qualifications do you have to sit here?" As soon as Tao Huaqi thought of a rebuttal, he heard Ning Yushi's lazy voice continue to come, "Oh, I remember, just now at the door, I heard my uncle say, you too are attending the shareholders' meeting on behalf of my grandfather. But how come I don't remember my grandfather entrusting my aunt to attend the shareholders' meeting?" As she spoke, Ning Yushi had already walked up to Ning Ying and looked at her with a smile on her face. For some reason, Ning Ying felt that Ning Yushi's gaze at her was as cold as ice, even carrying a sharp light, and her back was inexplicably surrounded by the chill of the forest. I blinked hard and reconnected with her eyes, as if everything just now was an illusion. That's right, this dead girl has been submissive in front of her for so many years. How could there be such a big change in just one night? Ning Ying calmed down and spoke, "What is your grandfather doing? Do we still need to report it to you?" Then, with a low voice and a threatening tone, he continued, "If you want Ning's company to go bankrupt like this, you can just keep messing around here. Ning Yushi chuckled lightly and turned to look at the shareholder who had just elected Tao Huaqi as the CEO. This is Li Hou-yang, Uncle Li. I'm sorry, I seem to have interrupted your conversation when I came in just now. Can you continue? You just said that in public and private, what is Mr. Tao the most? Li Hou-yang said, okay, since Miss asked me to speak, I will continue. This is for both public and private purposes, and Mr. Tao is the best candidate for acting president. Clap. 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 Suddenly, applause rang out. All shareholders looked at Ning Yushi puzzled. Did they agree? Ning Yushi said, it has to be said that Uncle Li is a brave representative among all the shareholders, and he deserves praise for his courage. However, could you first listen to a few words from the younger generation? Glancing over the crowd in the conference room and seeing no objections, Ning Yushi continued to speak. My aunt and uncle said they were representing my grandfather at the shareholder meeting. As a family member, I shouldn't have been concerned, but now that we are in the Ning family, a wrong decision could potentially ruin the Ning family. Therefore, I think it is safer to follow the legal process. Auntie, as an agent, you should have an authorization letter. Can you show it to everyone? Yeah, as an agent, you must have a power of attorney, otherwise it's not considered a representative of any kind. I don't think this young lady is as careless as rumored, otherwise how could she have thought of an authorization letter that even we forgot? When Ningying heard the power of attorney, her body trembled uncontrollably, and the hand holding the cane quietly tightened. Hearing the urging voices of shareholders, I was even more panicked. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Shareholders Meeting, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Shareholders Meeting, 2. Ningying calmed down and said, when my brother entrusted me as the agent, time was too tight, so there was no written form, only verbal authorization. Ning Yushi. Is there evidence to prove it? Is it recorded or recorded? Your aunt has said that time is tight, where is there time for recording? Yushi, don't waste everyone's time here, hurry back to the hospital. Ning Yushi turned a deaf ear to Tao Huaqi's irritable second half of the sentence. Since there is no evidence, my aunt has no right to represent my grandfather at the shareholders' meeting. As for all shareholders, you hastily allowed my aunt and uncle to attend the shareholders' meeting without verifying it beforehand, and even entrusted the important position of acting president to outsiders for decision-making. As she spoke, Ning Yushi suddenly slapped the table and her tone suddenly became sharp. I really don't know if you're saving the Ning family or harming them. Ning Yushi's body was shrouded in a chilling aura, and the air in the conference room became thin, making everyone gasp for breath. Especially Li Hou-yang, with a red old face, wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl in. Only the butler Qi, who had become a little boy at an age, blinked his starry eyes and looked at the young lady in front of him with admiration. Although the young lady doesn't have a high appearance, she inexplicably feels that the current young lady is very cool, handsome, and has a wooden structure. An aura of 1.8 meters. Scare them to death. See if they dare to bully the young lady while the old man is not around. Ningying blushed and her neck was thick with anger at her words. She slapped the table with a slap and stood up trembling, pointing at her neck and cursing, what is an outsider? Do you still consider me your relative in your eyes? Even if there is no evidence, is there anything wrong with me, as my brother's sister, attending the shareholder meeting on his behalf? Ning Yushi tilted her head and pondered for a moment before nodding. Auntie is right, so what's wrong with me as my grandfather's granddaughter attending the shareholders meeting, so that auntie would drive me away when she saw my first sentence? Ningying. You. Auntie, don't be in a hurry to scold, be careful not to get angry. I don't think my grandfather wants to have multiple companions either. Next, I want everyone to see something before deciding whether I am qualified to attend today's shareholders meeting. Uncle Qi. The butler Qi understood and placed the equity transfer certificate on the table, looking proud. The old man has already transferred all his shares to the young lady, so the young lady is now the largest shareholder of the Ning family and the only person qualified to attend the shareholders meeting. What? Ning Ying snatched the equity transfer letter from the table and looked at it carefully, her eyes filled with disbelief. How could it be? How could it be like this? She sent people to constantly monitor the lawyer that the old man trusted the most, but never received any news that the old man wanted to transfer shares. Which link went wrong? Auntie, should I give up this position now? Ning Yushi smiled at the shocked faces of Ning Ying and Tao Huaqi, who couldn't hide it in time, and let out a soft sigh of frustration. Having been bullied and raised by them for so many years, now being able to crush them is an unprecedented feeling of comfort. Seeing that they had not moved yet, the butler Qi approached and reminded, Madam Tao and Mr. Tao, you two are not qualified to attend the shareholders meeting. Please leave as soon as possible. Our shareholders meeting is about to begin. The voiceover is to hurry and leave, don't waste time here. Ning Ying finally regained consciousness from the shock and almost fainted from the meaning of his words. Now even a servant dares to ride on her head and act wildly. Steward Qi. Pay attention to your identity. I'm still your master. What identity did you use to drive me away? Auntie, this is why you are being unreasonable. This is the Ning group, not the place where you are messing around. It's better to go back quickly. Ning Yushi returned Ning Ying's words to her intact. You. Ning Ying blushed as she couldn't catch her breath. Tao Huaqi hurriedly helped her sit down and helped her calm down. Mom, calm down, calm down. What are you arguing with the younger generation about? Don't forget, even if we don't represent our uncle, they can't kick us out. Right. Ah Hua, take out the things. Tao Huaqi immediately took out several documents from his briefcase and threw them on the table with a bang. Yushi, you can see clearly that this is 5% of the shares of Ning Group, which are all under your aunt's name now. So, what qualifications do you have to drive us out? Ning Yushi casually tugged at the corner of her mouth and said, Uncle, since my aunt has shares in her hands, why didn't she take them out earlier? It not only caused misunderstandings but also wasted everyone's time. But forget it, since the misunderstandings have been resolved, let's start the meeting. Tao Huaqi glared at her with displeasure, his words rolling back and forth, but he had no chance to speak out. Is it their fault? Do they want to be misunderstood? Since she came in, they have been led by her nose. Do they have a chance to take it out? Has she given them a chance? The general meeting of shareholders has officially begun. Ning Yushi did not drive Ning Ying down from the main position again. According to her temperament, if we really drive her away, we don't know what year and month it will be. The most important thing now is Ning's current crisis, she doesn't have time to argue with her about those inconspicuous things. But she didn't sit down next to the main seat, instead she walked to the seat opposite Ning Ying and sat down. Alright, let's continue with the topic just now and share your thoughts on the preferred candidates for acting president. Miss, since you are now the largest shareholder of the Ning family and the most favored candidate of Mr. Ning, why choose this acting president? You should be the president. Ning Yushi glanced at the shareholder who was speaking and recognized him as one of the loyal shareholders to his grandfather. Jing Tian, with a sincere smile on his face. Uncle Jing, although I am a major shareholder, I am not alone in deciding such an important matter. I must listen to your opinions. If most shareholders do not agree, in case I become a hindrance after taking office, it will hurt your interests, right? Miss is right, Jing Tian. Miss has not yet been involved in the company's affairs. Are you in a hurry to recommend Miss as the CEO? You should first familiarize Miss with the company's affairs, so I think it is necessary to choose this acting CEO, after all, to solve the current crisis first, said an elderly man with white hair across from Jing Tian. Can Grandpa Xia have a suitable candidate? Ning Yushi looked at the old man with gray hair. Well. In terms of seniority, nephew Tao is more suitable. Tao Huachi instantly felt a lot of relief in his mood, and his lips lifted proudly. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Shareholders Meeting, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Shareholders Meeting, 3. Ning Yushi didn't need to look at Tao Huachi's expression, he also knew how proud he was now. These are all things she expected. If they can attend the shareholder meeting today, they won't be able to get anything. What about the opinions of other uncles and uncles? Besides me and my uncle, do you have any other candidates you like? Ning Yushi scanned the crowd and saw no one speaking. He lazily leaned back, found a comfortable position, and continued speaking. In that case, everyone, let's vote. Those who support me as the CEO, please raise your hand. As the words fell, only a few sparse people in the conference room raised their hands without hesitation. A few people are clearly still hesitating. And the rest didn't even think about raising their hands. Steward Chi couldn't help feeling a little anxious in his heart. Shouldn't Miss do something to suppress these shareholders before voting? Why did you vote so hastily? Now it seems that there is no chance of winning at all. Mississippi. Ning Yushi casually raised his hand and gently shook his index finger in the air, causing the steward Chi to stop talking. The emperor is not in a hurry, the eunuch is in a hurry. Ning Yushi. Is there anyone else who wants to raise their hand? After pausing for a few seconds, the hesitant shareholders still didn't raise their hands. What if I say I can solve Ning's current crisis and find a partner? Ning Yushi spoke calmly. The hesitant individuals clearly wavered. Ning Ying calmly gave Tao Huachi a glance, and Tao Huachi immediately stood up and retorted, "Niece, the crisis of this company is not something that can be solved with just a few words. You don't have connections and don't know how to manage the company. Where can you find a partner? How can you solve Ning's current crisis? So, can Uncle do it? Of course, I used to be the CEO of Dow, leading the company through its most glorious moments. If I were to come forward and discuss cooperation, who wouldn't sell me a little bit?" Ning Yushi chuckled lightly and shook her head, hiding the sarcasm at the corner of her mouth very well. "Uncle, in terms of seniority, I really can't compare to you. But you just forgot to say that it was you who led Dow to bankruptcy. If I remember correctly, the glorious moment you mentioned was when you took over Dow. After you became the CEO, Dow began to decline all the way until bankruptcy. I want to ask all shareholders, is this person what you hope for?" "This seems to be such a truth," said one hesitant shareholder. Jing Tian said, "Miss, you are right. You have already learned from the past. Do you want to see Ning's footsteps in the Tao's footsteps?" Jia Boyang said, "But as Mr. Tao said, his connections and qualifications are unmatched by Miss Ning. Isn't it important to choose the right person to solve the current crisis now?" Li Houyang said, "Moreover, a single failure is not enough to explain anything. On the other hand, it is also a good thing. With the experience of the last failure, isn't it better to make the right decision?" "You're right too." Xia Russian said, "I also think that Tao Xiannis is the most suitable candidate." In the conference room, with every word spoken, most of them switched sides to Tao Huachi. The butler Qi was filled with impatience and anger. Back then, these people received a lot of favors from the old man, but now they are all ungrateful and ruthless. Steward Qi took a few steps forward and instinctively wanted to refute a few words, but was blocked by Ning Yushi, who stood up. Ning Yushi didn't look at him, just shifted her gaze to Xia Russian and said, "Grandpa Xia, I wonder how your wife has been lately." Xia Russian said, "Girl, we are currently in a meeting. Why are we mentioning those family members who have minor issues?" Ning Yushi said to herself, "I remember when your wife fell seriously ill, all the hospitals in Yunqing were helpless, and you had almost lost all your wealth. In the end, it was your grandfather who entrusted his connections to help you find a renowned international doctor and provided 1 million yuan to treat your wife's illness. In recent years, although your wife has still been plagued by illness, she has managed to regain her life. Grandpa knows about your hard work in recent years and has also helped a lot privately. But these. You seem to have forgotten. Xia Russian couldn't say a word at once. Uncle Li, are you satisfied with your new villa recently? Isn't it much better than the ice chairs in the park earlier? As the saying goes, never forget the well digger when drinking water, but I think you've completely forgotten. When Li Houliang was in his teens, he ran out of his stepfather's house and wandered the streets, living a life of not having enough to eat and not being warm. On the benches in the park, in the remote streets and alleys, under the cold bridge, he has slept. When you don't have money to eat, you can only do some sneaky activities. My grandfather was kind-hearted back then, and seeing that he was pitiful, he didn't pursue him for stealing his wallet. He even provided him with education and allowed him to enter the Ning family. Now he has become someone else's lackey, it's really ridiculous. Li Houliang lowered his head in shame and stopped speaking. And this Uncle Qin. Ning Yushi almost pointed out all the shareholders who opposed her and chatted about some of their youth. The butler Qi was stunned and his chin was about to drop. These seem to be all written in the information about shareholders. But how can the young lady remember so clearly? Moreover, the young lady was able to accurately identify all shareholders. This is simply memorizing the information. But it seems that the young lady only watched for a dozen or so minutes. It's already good to finish reading in such a short time, let alone remember all the content above. Miss, this skill is simply incredible. Ning Ying, who was in the main position, and Tao Huaqi, who was next to her, went from being confident and proud at the beginning to looking slightly cracked and shattered now, but they had no way to intervene. I can only watch as Ning Yushi speaks fluently, watching the shareholders who were originally bought by her gradually fall towards Ning Yushi. Just as she was closing her eyes in despair, a voice suddenly retorted, "Miss Ning, we have not forgotten Mr. Ning's kindness to us back then. Mr. Tao is also from the Ning family, and when we recommend him, has it become what you call being ungrateful? Uncle Jia, did I say that to you? Oh, by the way, there's something I've been puzzled about. I hope uncles can help me answer my questions. Auntie is always my grandfather's sister, but why hasn't Grandpa given her any shares? Is it just because Auntie married into the Tao family? Impossible." Everyone subconsciously gave the answer in their hearts. At that time, the Tao family was also one of the top prestigious families in Yuncheng, and Ning Ying's marriage to the Tao family was also a icing on the cake for the Ning family. In order to prevent my daughter from being looked down upon and neglected in her husband's family, we should always give some shares as a blessing. But back then, Ning Ying didn't receive any shares and only received some real estate. Now thinking about it, there is indeed a big problem. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Shareholders Meeting, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Shareholders Meeting, 4. Ning Ying's heart became flustered as she watched everyone's faces change. Ning Yushi. Don't talk nonsense here. I didn't want shares in Ning's company back then. Besides, we are now discussing the management of Ning's company, not just talking about family matters. Ning Yushi said, "Auntie, what I'm talking about is also a serious matter. I just want to remind all uncles that I'm my grandfather's granddaughter, so I shouldn't harm the Ning family. As for the network that my uncle mentioned, who can say it accurately for 30 years in Hedong and 30 years in Heshi? Okay. Miss Ning, even if we agree to let you become the CEO, what can you guarantee us with? How can we trust you?" Jia Boyang asked. 1 week, give me a week's time. If I haven't resolved the crisis of the Ning family within a week, I voluntarily resign from the position of CEO and return the shares to my grandfather. Ning Yushi stood there with confidence and arrogance, half a small face showing determination that was unconsciously convincing. The final result, without a doubt, is that Ning Yushi became the new president of Ning Group. Ning Yingqi wished to tear up the equity transfer agreement in Ning Yushi's hand. She worked hard all night last night, but today, the fat from her mouth was snatched by this dead girl. She didn't tear her apart, it's already the last mercy to her. After successfully taking over the position of CEO, Ning Yushi's tense nerves finally relaxed. Ignoring the cold and vicious gaze from the opposite side, Ning Yushi leisurely leaned back on the chair and closed her eyes to rest. The butler Qi noticed the fatigue in her eyebrows and eyes, and asked someone to bring her a cup of hot tea to refresh her spirits. After all the shareholders left, Ning Yushi stood up and walked towards the door. Stop. Ning Yushi, I underestimated you. You usually appear timid and submissive in front of me, but today you're showing off your might. Ning Ying walked up to her with a cane, her sharp eyes scrutinizing her, as if trying to see through her. At the shareholders' meeting just now, she was eager to arrange Tao Huaqi to join Ning's company and didn't have time to think too much. After finishing, she instead pondered deeply on every sentence of Ning Yushi. Since she entered, she did not first explain her strengths to persuade shareholders, nor did she flatter them. Instead, she followed the shareholders' ideas and conducted a vote. Moreover, the first person to invest is oneself. But why did she let the shareholders vote so early when she knew she had no chance of winning? It wasn't until she later identified the majority of shareholders that she realized that the first vote was just a cover-up. It's to see how many people are standing on her side under the guise. Afterwards, she used Ning Boguang's kindness to all shareholders, big and small, to win over most of them, but then raised an ambiguous question, making everyone doubt her identity. This has temporarily won over all shareholders and successfully helped her become the CEO. Such a perfect plan is not something that a perennial clumsy person can come up with. So, there is only one possibility. After all these years, her lack of knowledge, timidity, and weakness have all been faked. Auntie, I was forced to do it today. Please forgive me if I offended you today, Ning Yushi said softly, lowering her head. In an instant, it turned back to that timid and cowardly Ning Yushi. It seems that she was not the one who spoke eloquently and confidently just now. I dare not say, after all, you are Miss Ning, and I am just an outsider. Ning Ying said with a strange tone. Damn girl, your mind is really malicious. For the sake of this CEO position, you can even talk nonsense about your aunt's background. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Tao Huaqi's eyes were torn, and he didn't say a good word to his annoying niece. For so many years, he has never liked the wild creature brought back by his missing sister. If it weren't for her presence, Ning would naturally be handed over to him. Why bother to fight for it? In the past, I didn't take her seriously because I couldn't compete with him due to her lack of ambition. Unfortunately, he fell on the hands of the person he had always underestimated today. At the shareholder meeting just now, her last question was something that even a fool could hear. She just wanted to tell everyone that her mother may not be the true bloodline of the Ning family. With the previous kindness as a prelude, who dares to choose someone who may be an outsider as the CEO? Even if there are still some shareholders standing on their side, as long as the vote reaches 2/3, she is not afraid of those shareholders who stand on his side. Look at how meticulous the thinking is and how vicious the plan is. For the position of this CEO, everything is really necessary. Uncle, I know I did a lot wrong today, which made you and my aunt unhappy. But taking over the company is what my grandfather has always hoped for, and I also want him to be happy when he hears this news so that his health can recover faster. Ning Yushi lowered her eyebrows and eyes. Even though she was admitting her mistake, she could always feel the stubborn energy on her body. Not humble or arrogant, very unpleasant. Ha! The old man is really your talisman. You can use it as an excuse in any situation. Since you have become the CEO, let's work hard. I'm looking forward to seeing how you pulled Ning from hell to heaven. Ahua, let's go. Tao Huachi gave Ning Yushi a cold glance and helped Ning Ying leave. Entering the elevator, Tao Huachi was furious and said, Mom. Did we just give up the position of CEO to that stinky girl like this? How could you be so willing? Now you're tough. Why did you go early? Why didn't you say anything during the shareholders meeting? I reminded you last night to carefully read the information of each shareholder. Have you read it? I've worked hard to pave the way for you, but you can't even fight a little girl. Ning Ying glanced at him, feeling even more angry. His son is very obedient, but he values women too much, neglects his career, and has no business acumen. A few years ago, Dao wouldn't have fallen into his hands if he hadn't cared more about women than the company and made worse decisions over and over again. She was pointed out by a younger generation at the shareholder meeting today, and her face was completely ruined. Last night, she reminded him in the study to carefully review the information of each shareholder, identify their weaknesses, and prescribe the right medicine. But he was lucky. As soon as he returned to his room, the fox spirit was so obsessed that he couldn't find him, forgetting all the important things she had told him. Tao Huachi knew he was wrong and lowered his head without making a rebuttal. After returning, please stay away from that Yao Fong and take a good look at economic and management books. Make more appointments with Dao's previous partners and try to negotiate a few. This week is not only an opportunity for that dead girl, but also for us. If she wants to become the CEO, it depends on whether she can sit firmly. Ning Ying said, with a hint of essence flashing in her eyes. I know now, Mom. Recommendation vote, vote. Move your little fingers and let me see your figures. End of this chapter.